Hi everybody and welcome back to this week's edition of B2B NAV, and we're going to revisit a topic that we've actually covered in the previous podcast, that is ABM. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, we're talking about account-based marketing, which was certainly one of the buzzwords and trends that was predicted to come more to the forefront of B2B marketing in 2020 and beyond. I guess across our client base, guys, we've seen various clients starting to adopt, embrace and consider ABM as part of their marketing mix. Does anybody want to give us an introduction or an overview of ABM, or would you like me to? I don't mind either way.
I'll go for it, and you can fill in.
Go on, Ollie.
So, ABM is account-based marketing. So the general principle is that instead of reaching out there to a broad audience, looking at your kind of target industries and kind of promoting to everybody, you start thinking first about who you'd like to work with, create that list of specifically which companies you'd like to work with. You often split this down into kind of tier 1s to 3s in terms of who's the most important, who are the big players you'd love to win, down to who are the people that you'd like to work with, but you don't necessarily want to put as much budget into trying to target. And then you kind of start widening it out from there. So at those companies, who are the contacts that you need to speak to, and not in general who are the contacts, but specifically what are the roles, what are their names, what are their job titles, where do they work, and finding out more and more information about them so that you can deliver them a very personalized marketing experience. You can give them unique content, unique to them, that really kind of puts your best foot forward, but positions it in a way that really fits what their needs are, what their company's needs are, and what their individual needs are within their role, so that you've got a much better chance of them being engaged and caring versus them just seeing kind of a generic promotion.
Okay, nicely done, Ollie. John, for all the listeners that are probably sat there going, don't we always do that? Isn't that common sense marketing? What's your thoughts?
Well, you know my opinion on this. It is. I get really frustrated with things like this. Content marketing is another really good example of a similar thing. You know, I'll start with that and move on. But 10 years ago, there was this big kind of move of everyone was talking about content marketing. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's the other. You know, HubSpot came into existence, as did a lot of the marketing automation platforms.
Yeah. And
fundamentally, isn't that what we've always just done? As an industry, we've created content to sell things to people. And then with ABM, I think there's a danger of it. Is it the tech companies trying to find a place in the marketing mix and inventing something?
Yeah.
And creating something that fundamentally, again, existed. I can remember back in right back in the day, in the early 2000s, when we did things called RPCs, which were reply paid cards on every piece of direct mail. You sent the odd email, but most of it was done through RPCs, where someone would have a checklist of maybe 10 things. Are you interested in this, this, and this? And you tick them, send it back in, and then your marketing would manually be sent back out to you, aligned to what you said you liked and what you were interested in.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think for me, one of the things that's shaping it is the C-suite's putting more pressure on return on investment on marketing budgets, isn't it, though? So I think my take on it is, for good, high-quality marketeers and salespeople, it's something that you've always done. So it's just laser-focused marketing and laser-focused selling. So as Ollie kicks off with at the beginning, the analogy that's always given is marketeers tend to cast the net wide in hope of catching a fish of relevance that you actually went out to catch that day, whereas ABM is much more like replacing the net with the spear and being more focused around your efforts, exactly as Ollie said it at the start. But then I think it's come about more recently, tech stack developments and all the rest of it, which we can definitely come back to, but also the fact that there's nowhere for marketeers to hide. There's less and less places for marketeers to hide. So the days of spray and pray marketing, when it was kind of like, oh, let's just have a go at it and hope nobody asks the question, what business impact did that have? And people are hiding, hoping it doesn't come up in a meeting. Now people are asking those questions. So what did we get from that? What was the bottom line impact?
It's interesting. I think that's come about because there's more of an alignment between sales and marketing. And there was always, and you can hark back and you can see it where it happened, that if someone was questioned, well, what was the business impact of this marketing campaign? It'd be, oh, well, got lost in sales, didn't it? Or sales would then go, oh, well, we've not had anything from marketing. So suddenly there's like that huge disconnect. And the one thing I would say is, while I do deride technology for just trying to jump and kind of almost create problems for it to solve, what it does do is it does make it easier, and it does make it more accountable, and it does make it more manageable. And for that, that's a real positive.
Well, I think one of the things we have
fundamentally,
I was going to say, one of the things that I guess is quite different between the past and the present is that if you were going to do a marketing campaign in the early 90s, I'm assuming you would have started with a list of companies because you needed to make something out.
You bought a list.
Yeah.
You'd actually do that. You'd buy
that list from, and I'm sure in many cases it was a huge list, but you knew which companies you were contacting. As we moved into this digital landscape, then that's no longer the case. I'm literally ticking boxes that say, I want to target this industry, I want to target these job titles and pressing send, and I don't really know who that's going to. So I think when you start thinking about the fact that, budgets are getting more challenged and we want to see ROI, we look at that campaign and say, we've advertised to this industry, great, what did we get out of it? And we've got these 3 companies, do you actually want to work with them or not? Maybe not. So this is kind of, I would say, a bit of a reaction to that we say, actually, well, rather than going with these industry-wide campaigns, let's focus on those 3 big opportunities that we want to win and really hammer them home.
But you see more and more, aren't you, that the marketing consultancies, and we do it when we're trying to explain it to somebody, when you're talking about flipping the funnel. So the sales funnel, typically you'll see all these pictures with it magically twizzing around at the minute and showing you more of a, start with who you want to sell to and start with who you want to engage with. But again, I just keep coming back to it. Surely that's common sense. Surely everybody has those conversations. But I guess maybe if they haven't and they've been casting the net wide, one of the next barriers I think we're seeing with our clients or prospects is, okay, I know I want to sell to these. So we've got to follow an ABM route or a laser targeted sales and marketing route, whatever you want to refer to it as. But let's call it what it's been called in the industry, ABM. So you've picked your 10 accounts you want to sell to, maybe 10 individuals in some cases. So we've had it with some construction clients where there's actually key individuals that hold the keys to framework agreements or panels or considerations for tenders and so on. So they pick these 10 people they want to market to. Where do you start? And this seems to be the stumbling block, I think, for the next chunk of things, in a way of, okay, I'm going to do this. What on earth do I do next? And I think that, so what's the advice there? What's your experience so far, I guess, with the clients we've worked with, your knowledge of the industries, what are you seeing?
So I think we recently did this with a client of ours, and I think the starting point is obviously understanding which companies you want to work with. And I'd say that most companies and most sales teams already have that in mind, but if not, then that's something that just needs to be talked through. The next step, which I don't think our clients necessarily always understand initially, is doing that deep dive into those potential clients, prospects, to understand who it is that you need to be speaking to. Because it's not enough to know that you want to work with company A, you need to know who at company A, and then going further to understand their role and what they're interested in. So the first place to start for us is always having that very detailed research process so that we understand who we're reaching. We have the ability to reach them in understanding, how to contact them, where they work, what's their telephone number, in some cases what's their email address, and so on, and understanding what they need to see to make them pay attention.
Okay. There's a need for a bit of realism in that as well, though, isn't there? In that, I think everyone puts so much onus on ABM being the silver bullet that's going to solve all the problems.
Yeah.
But actually, you've got to be realistic enough in your thinking to know that it's a journey. It is. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're absolutely right. All we can do, and I've seen it with our work. We do an incredible deep dive of research right at the beginning, but actually, it's like when you meet someone or meet a new person, you only get that surface view of what they're putting out there. So it's only over time that you're going to get that deeper and deeper understanding of what motivates them, what moves them.
I think it's that consistent application of it as well, isn't it? Which I think is what you're saying there, John, about the journey side of things, because I think a lot of the clients we've spoken to who sort of have done a bit of reading on ABM, and they, as you say, that silver bullet, they think that first piece of correspondence is going to win the work.
It's going to translate to a sale, and it won't.
No, it's the first touch point in an ongoing journey. And I tend to try to explain to people when you're explaining it in the sense of, if you've got £100,000 marketing budget for a campaign, I'm making up numbers here just to make it a nice round number. Do you want to spend that on potentially X thousand irrelevant targets that you don't want to work with, or would you rather invest that 100,000 across 5 individuals maybe and make the most cohesive campaign that at least you're going to drip feed relevant and valuable content to them that is going to make them want to engage?
Yeah, I'll just caveat that there to say that there is a place for both approaches.
Absolutely.
So the broader campaign can bring you relevant leads too. It's just more of an unknown. In many situations, that is the right approach to take.
Yeah.
But particularly in a B2B space, and particularly if you've got the kind of higher value sales, or ongoing contracts or large contracts, then it is worth spending more money to try and bring in those higher value.
Yeah.
The exact figure and how much is worth investing is going to vary from company to company, but I think that's an important consideration to factor in.
Yeah, I think you got to work out a whole set of parameters, haven't you, around lifetime value of the customer, deal size, effort involved. There's also that kind of outbound, inbound thing, isn't there? Of they're much more in control now.
Yeah,
prospects are always in much more control. You've given me tons of stats, Ollie, about how much content they read about you and your business before they get in touch, and it's a real inbound driven world now with quality of lead scoring and all this kind of sophisticated stuff that frankly never existed when it was just snail mail and the odd byline or ad in a trade publication.
And I think that's why a lot of people are turning off from it, because they start it as a good idea, but it is quite difficult to.
It's hard work.
It's hard work, and there's a lot more effort than I want to sell to this individual. Because with ABM, for the people that have done the reading, the kind of examples I guess that I'm giving here and people are giving is kind of the one-to-one or one-to-few kind of marketing examples. And you've got one-to-many, where Ollie was saying you might divide people into companies or groups or personas or profiles. And then you've got the bigger, wider brand awareness splash activity that Ollie's referring to in terms of going to the market with a broader campaign. But all of that comes back to what objectives are you trying to achieve? So what are you trying to do with the campaign you're doing? And I think that's the starting point that we start with every single client we work with, of what do you want to do. So if it's lead gen, okay, cool. Do you want to generate a number of leads that you're going to pass across to marketing, or do you want to sell to individuals? And that's where ABM, the conversation becomes more targeted. And I think that's where, for me, with our clients, it's knowing your audience groups and knowing who the decision makers are in those businesses as well. Because
and it's knowing the value of the audience groups as well. We, like with our client base, for example, we've got what I would call unashamedly commodity manufacturers who sell masses of single products at a very low unit cost. But then they've also got higher end propositions where it might be a service proposition, an installation proposition, a huge capex expenditure that's higher value. And you've got to kind of, from our perspective, we've got to be realistic in terms of advising, or what's the opposite of advising? Discouraging a client who might come to us wanting to, I want to do ABM. Why do you want to do it? Oh, it's the new thing. Well, let's look at your market first. Is your market a market that's ripe for ABM? Is it a price-based market? Is it a value-based market? Is it a service-based market? What is it? Can you create
a lot of it depends on what success looks like, doesn't it? Which is a question that I always hate, but it's a question of relevance, I guess, in this case, of if you're going to run this campaign and you win one account. So if that's one £50 order through an e-commerce website, it's probably failed. If that's £1 million order from a key customer, because that's how big the average order and deal size is for your business, that's when ABM can really come to the forefront, and you should spend time investing in getting to know those key prospects, key contacts, key customers that you ultimately want to sell and engage with. I guess one of the things that tends to crop up a lot, Ollie, as well is, okay, I've got these 10 individuals, 10 people I want to go and contact, whatever it may be, or hundreds even, or whatever it may be, thousands. Where do you start in terms of the considerations around GDPR, of how you can, I know different territory considerations here, obviously, but in the sense of how are you allowed to send them a LinkedIn message? Are you allowed to send them a DM of some kind? What is and isn't precluded there, I guess?
Yeah, so without going too far in this and dedicating an entire podcast to it, it does vary by company. Sorry, not by company, by country. So you will need to look at which countries you're trying to target. The UK, for example, is really open if I have your business email address, I can contact you. Basically, we don't separate that at the moment. Whereas in many European countries, you need to have opted in for me to be able to contact you, and that applies whether that's an individual salesperson emailing you, or whether it's coming from a marketing campaign. With platforms like LinkedIn, you signed up to LinkedIn and you've agreed to LinkedIn terms and conditions. So if you're on that platform, you can be messaged. So yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to be able to have those messages going through to people. The other aspect here, because there's a different route really for every channel. So phone calls, for example, are completely different. So they aren't prevented but under GDPR or the related e-privacy regulation, because they're seen as something that's, I suppose, harder to do on a mass scale. So if you want to pick up your phone and phone a particular company to speak to an individual, then you absolutely can do. The only caveat to that is that things like auto dialers are more prohibited. You can't have your auto dialer ringing every different company. So things like, to summarize, I suppose, messaging through social media, absolutely fine. Emailing people, if you've managed to get their email address, however you've got it, it will depend on the country, depending on whether or not you're allowed to email them. About 3 or 4 European countries, it's fairly open. Most countries in Europe are fairly locked down. When it comes to things like phone, fairly open. And then direct mail, again, it's fairly open as long as you're not doing kind of mass campaigns.
Okay.
And is that like it used to be in the olden days? So I keep saying the olden days, sorry, pre-internet, pre-marketing automation, where you would typically buy a list from a publisher and they'd give you one bite of the cherry. So they would say, right, you've bought our list of, or from a list or company, you know, there used to be companies that would sell data lists like Dun & Bradstreet, people like that. And you'd get one bite of the cherry. So you could take that list and you could mail everyone on that list once. If they responded, you then owned that email address and could then continue the conversation. If they didn't respond, you couldn't contact them again.
It's hard to say. I mean, because I suppose that's dealing with third-party lists, and I think that's always a tricky area and one that I would always kind of prefer to avoid, because I think you're generally getting into kind of not shady tactics, but you're not going to get anywhere near the same response rate as you would by trying to go about things at a more legitimate route. And things are definitely getting more complicated with regards to GDPR in that regard. So if you are looking at anything that's third-party data like that, I'd just really interrogate the person you speak to, whoever's providing that list, on GDPR, how they've obtained those contacts, what you're allowed to do, how they are GDPR compliant, and make sure that you understand and they're informing you how you can be GDPR compliant with that data. Right. It really depends on how they've collected it and what they've told people.
And I guess to tie in and sort of wrap up this session, to not to give it too long, because you can go on forever about ABM at the minute, but in the sense of, I guess, the point around personalization, personalized communications, and even hyper-personalization, ABM's another good opportunity to start thinking about that. John, would you say, in the sense of if you are thinking about communicating with an individual or a business or whatever, that how can that be reflected in terms of creating that more personalized journey for them?
Yeah. I think it can certainly give you some advantages, but again, like you said earlier, Matt, you've got to be in it for the long run. You can't just imagine that you're going to kind of, I don't know, I'm going to send a direct mail or an email to Matthew Smith at BDB. Oh, that's it. That's person. I've done it now. Yeah. Who's got 2 children, and I know that, so I'm going to add that in. Yeah. It's not going to work. It's kind of, you've got to A, be in it for the long run, and B, understand that the power's not with you now. It's kind of, it's that flip, isn't it, from outbound to inbound. It's like Ollie was saying with GDPR, it feels like that's pushing everything to a more inbound-led approach. So you've got to have the knowledge, you've got to have the content, you've got to have the proposition right for that prospect.
Yeah. And I think, we've definitely touched on this before, but make sure you're actually adding value. You can send a personalized, communication to somebody that mentions their specific company and their name and all things that they might be interested in. But if at the end of the day, all you're saying is, please read my brochure, they're probably not going to switch on, because people see a sales pitch and they turn off. So think about what challenges they might be having or what opportunities they might be open to, and putting those in front of them, and being that, I guess, more consultative approach that will make them pay more attention to you, as opposed to switch off the second they see whatever you send them.
Yeah. Great. Sounds good. So I don't think we'll get into this one in terms of what key considerations people should think about when starting an ABM campaign. I think what I would say is, as a wrapper, is don't be worried by it, but just take it seriously. So is it right for you to be adopting that kind of approach? What are the objectives you want to achieve from the ABM campaign you're doing? What's the measurement you're putting around it? And what does success look like? What does a great ABM campaign look like? So on and so on. I think what I would say for the meantime is don't just jump on the gravy train because you think it's a buzzword and you should be doing ABM. It might not be right for your business. So there's wider marketing tactics, wider communication strategies, and that catch-all, bigger splash marketing might be right for you. So we're not saying it's wrong. It's more of ABM's another consideration I think to throw into the marketing mix. So okay. Anything else to add, guys, before I close off?
I suppose just I'll leave it on the point that I think the key thing to getting ABM right, and hopefully everybody that's listening is already doing this, is making sure that your marketing team and your sales team are working hand in hand.
Yes.
I know that they're always a little bit odds in some capacity, but start joining sales meetings, start understanding what challenges they're facing, who they're trying to reach, because really it should be a journey that works hand in hand while that salesperson's having those conversations over a period of time with that prospect. Make sure that you're nurturing them with content, and make sure the sales team understands what they're being nurtured with and that it's relevant and related, so that the salesperson can have relevant conversations along that journey with them about the content that they're being sent.
I think that's really important, Ollie, that kind of idea of being able to use sales objections to actually power your content and your solutions to kind of mirror what they need.
Very much so. Okay, well, hopefully that's, I guess, demystified some of the stuff around ABM. It seems to be one of those topics that does keep popping up, and no doubt we'll continue to revisit it as and when we come across different client experiences and as the landscape continues to evolve around it, I guess. And on that note, feel free to check out our ungated knowledge hub, www.b2bknowledge.com, our content hub for all things B2B marketing, helping our clients, prospects and contacts navigate the ever-evolving B2B marketing landscape. So that's it from us for this week. We'll be back again, probably remotely, probably via this kind of Zoom or team setting at some point. We hope to be back in the office together having a beer, but from Sir Patrick Stewart, from Ollie, from John, from me, thanks very much. See you soon.